The petrol engines are generally speaking more reliable than in the predecessor, but not completely, so they do have a fair share of issues anyway. First, I have to mention that in some countries this Golf was available with a simple 1.6-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol engine, which has regular port injection. The main issue of this engine worth mentioning is the possibility of bigger or smaller oil consumption. All the other engines are a bit more complex since they are equipped with direct injection and with a turbocharger. The 1-liter TSI is a hilarious and suspicious small engine, but currently this engine doesn't have any major issues. On the other side, all the 1.2-liter TSI and all 1.4-liter TSI engines made to mid-2014, plus the weakest 1.2-liter TSI made to 2017, can have issues with excessive oil consumption. The oil consumption can appear after 100,000 kilometers or just later, close to 200,000 kilometers. So I'm not saying that all of these engines consume oil, but the chance of excessive oil consumption in these engines is simply higher. The main cause of oil consumption is the bad design of the oil scraper rings. Long story short, in these engines the oil scraper rings have very small holes in them which can easily clog up with carbon. The other petrol engines have better oil scraper rings with better design which are not that vulnerable for clogging. However, on some of these engines the oil consumption can be caused by the faulty valve guides in the cylinder head as well. VW acknowledged this and released a document about this, so this particular issue was a lot of times fixed under warranty. But be ready that the oil consumption in these engines for the most part is caused by the oil scraper rings, which VW never admitted. All in all, I would just avoid these affected engines completely or keep at least 2,000 or 3,000 euros for the repair if you choose them. Certain 1.4-liter TSI and all 1.5-liter TSI engines are equipped with that awesome cylinder deactivation feature. For now it seems to be working fine, but I don't trust this thing, so I expect some issues related to this in the future. The 1.4 TGI and 1.5 TGI engines are working with petrol and with natural gas. I have no idea if the 1.4 TGI has the bad design oil scraper rings, and since nobody is paying me, I'm not gonna investigate this. The 1.5 TGI is fine. The 1.5 TSI engine has often issues with slightly fluctuating revs after startup and sometimes during the first couple of kilometers of driving a cold engine. This harmless issue is sometimes fixed with a software update, but sometimes it's not. Other than this engine doesn't have any major issues. Then there are the 1.8-liter TSI engines. The 180 horsepower version doesn't have unexpected issues, and since it has dual port injection, it doesn't have issues with carbon buildup either. On the other side, the slightly less powerful version has direct injection only, so you have to be ready for carbon buildup on the intake valves. But the biggest issue is that if this particular engine is mated to a manual gearbox, then there is a small chance that it can have an interesting issue called crank walk, which is gonna destroy the engine. Long story short, the thrust bearings in these engines are undersized, so there is a chance that they can get worn prematurely or even fall off. In this case the crankshaft is gonna have bigger play, and this will destroy the mechanical components around the crankshaft, which roughly translates to a catastrophic engine failure. Most of the crank walk cases happened in GTI models which had an aftermarket clutch with an uprated performance pressure plate fitted, so cars with these upgrades are more prone to this. However, there are even fully stock cars which had this issue, and since the 1.8-liter TSI has the same thrust bearings, we can't exclude this engine either. All in all, this of course can happen, but not often, so it's not really worth it to start to panic. However, it's worth it to visit my website for some useful additional information about this, including some prevention tips. The last non-performance model is the GTE, which is a plug-in hybrid. This version is equipped with a 1.4-liter TSI engine, which is in this case fine. But it's also equipped with all those complex and very expensive hybrid-related components, a battery pack in the back, and a unique gearbox. Long story short, buying a used GTE with a warranty is fine, but I would not recommend buying this car out of warranty unless you know a mechanic who is familiar with these cars and you have extra money for the battery pack or for the gearbox repair. Now let's check out the other issues which are related to all the TSI engines. All of the TSI engines, except a couple of examples, are equipped with direct injection only, which means that at some point you have to be ready to deal with carbon buildup or faulty injectors. Every 100,000 kilometers it's good to check the intake valves for carbon buildup, eventually clean them, and every 200,000 kilometers it's good to check the injectors, have them tested, eventually replace them. However, the more powerful 1.8 liter TSI is equipped with direct and also with port injection. This means that in this engine there is no problem with significant carbon buildup. Next, all of the petrol engines can have issues with coolant leaks, but mostly in the before facelift cars. Specifically, the thermostat/water pump housing can often leak. The housing was revised several times, so always buy the latest revision and check the coolant level regularly. Then it's definitely worth to check all the petrol engines for oil leaks as well, since occasionally there are cases of rear main seal leak, which is not the cheapest repair. Plus, the 1.8 TSI engines can have an oil leak from the upper timing chain cover. It's also good to know that these 1.8 liter TSI engines are equipped with plastic oil pans. These very eco-friendly oil pans seem to be holding up fine with no leaks yet. It's important to add this "yet" word here, because from experience we all know that as the plastic gets older, it not only gets more brittle, but it can also deform a bit. So who knows how long this engineering masterpiece will last before it cracks, warps and leaks oil. Occasionally turbocharger failures can occur in all the TSI engines as well, but that's not like very common. On the other side, the turbo wastegate actuators can fail more often, mainly in the 1.2 TSI and 1.4 TSI units. In this case, you have to usually replace just the actuator, but if you are unlucky, then the whole turbocharger. The ignition coil failures are not common, which is good, but the ignition coils can be like really stuck in place. So stuck that many owners simply broke them during removing when they changed the spark plugs. The oldest or higher mileage cars can have slight vacuum leaks as well. These vacuum leaks can be caused by cracked plastic or rubber vacuum hoses or because of the faulty PCV. The last thing which is good to check is the coolant. It has to be clean and it has to have this pinkish violet color. If it has dark, orange or whitish color, or if it has strange deposits in it, then run away from the car. As you can see, there are some issues, but I have to add that with regular and proper maintenance, most of these engines can reach 200,000 kilometers or even 300,000 kilometers without major issues. All of these engines are equipped with a timing belt, except the 1.8 liter TSI engines, which have a timing chain. The timing belt of these petrol engines can usually withstand even more than 200,000 kilometers, but it's definitely good to replace it before 200,000 kilometers or every 6 years. The 1.8 liter TSI engines have a timing chain mechanism, which is usually fine at least up to 200,000 kilometers. But definitely check for a rattling noise at cold start, and at around 200,000 kilometers or after buying, remove the plug on the timing chain cover and check the chain tensioner. If the tensioner is pushed out too much, then you should replace the chain mechanism. For more information about this car, visit my website or check out the complete used car review video I did about it.